Hey all, welcome to today's channel chat. This is part of a series we're doing on hot button issues in MMOs, in which we're getting many different perspectives to weigh in on some of the more polarizing issues. And joining us today is someone who I met through this channel, which is so cool, CyberFauna. Thanks so much for joining us today. How are things?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you, Grolo?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. So let's dig into some of these flame-inducing issues. But before we start, how about you give us some context? Tell us a little bit about your gaming background.
If I say my big gaming background, I started with back in the day. I started with Sega Sun. That's probably how far I go back in terms of gaming. Started with I think one of the original Alien games, and eventually going through PS1, PS2, the Xbox series, and eventually sort of came to PC relatively recently, probably within teens. In terms of actual games I played, generally a lot of them were single player games. Although very quickly sort of go between platformers like Crash Bandicoot to more story driven games, which is kind of where I do like story driven games. So I think my experience was more with stuff with Bioshock, with Assassin's Creed, at least the earlier versions, where I could be really read into the game. Because another part of my background is basically I read a lot back when especially when I was at school, and I found like story-driven games really got that part where I like reading a book when you want to know what the next chapter says. So a lot of playing these games was like, I want to see what the next chapter. Where's the story unfold?
Awesome. And we were chatting a little bit before this, and you mentioned you might have done a little bit of game dev. Was that right?
I did game dev in college. It was like not. I did about 2 years worth, and I did everything that went into games. Usually from like pre-production, usually like concept art, writing out the stories for different things, like writing up what the general brief is to actually producing the game. A lot of it was like for general 3D modeling, animating, audio work of like putting sounds to different stuff, and eventually post production where you just file reports and basically work out stuff. But I haven't done, and I'm not saying anything of being an expert in the field, but more in the terms of I have enough of an understanding to appreciate when I look at stuff like Star Citizen and stuff. I can really appreciate what goes into making a project like this,
Mm-hmm.
because I know it's like how even though I did a lot, because I've seen a lot of it on like Spectrum. I'm sure you have on Spectrum, Reddit, even your own comment section where it's like, oh, the devs are like being lazy, or like why is this so hard to put in? It's like I think how hard it actually is, even for what seems to be a very simple thing to actually do, because you have to not only code it in, you have to animate it, you have to get all different departments to actually put it in. And that's not including like bugs you have to fix and all that. It's like it's a lot more nuanced than you think. Oh, just put this in, it'd be really dead simple.
Yeah, I can relate as well. I'm kind of like you. I'm not an expert in the game development field at all, but obviously I work in an adjacent field doing programming. The smallest thing can be a Herculean task at times. It's really hard if you're not in the field or close to it in some way, I imagine, to appreciate the difficulty. It's kind of like me trying to appreciate the difficulty of replacing the engine of a car or something like that. I have no idea, but it's very
Oh yeah.
tedious. So you mentioned Star Citizen. Do you play Star Citizen?
Yes, I officially, if I go by when I started about 2015.
Wow.
So as I said, I've been around the block. I think I started, I believe, just when they introduced 2.0, with the first PTA, when you can actually like go out beyond the hangar. I believe that's when I started joining. As
Okay.
I've been sort of on and off playing, watching news as it comes out, watching different people's perspective over the course of, was it 10 years now?
Yeah. 10 years.
Yeah.
You got in
Oh yeah.
a lot sooner than I did. I didn't join until 317.
Ooh, it's like just before the dreaded Feed.18.
Yes. I had like a couple
Yeah,
months of like, wow, this game's really great, and then 318 hit, and I'm like, I took like a 6 month break because
yeah.
my character was literally broke and I could not log in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had done. It's like I said, it's not like CJ can't make screw ups.
Yeah.
It's certainly not.
Yeah. Um,
uh,
but were there any other MMOs that you got into, or is Star Citizen your first?
Star Citizen was my first, although ironically, my boyfriend actually got me into my second MMO. Because originally I tried to get him to play with me, although he's not as into it as I am. So it does take a bit of working to us to actually get together to play. But I think there was one day where I was asking him, "Hey, can we?" Because I think I was trying to do something in Star Citizen, and we need a bit more time. And he said, "Okay, if I do this with you, will you play Final Fantasy 14 with me?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." But eventually had to come off. Eventually, I did agree, and I actually downloaded and started playing FF14.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I bought Premium. And eventually, I think we ended up drifting off because I think between my boyfriend's friends leaving and him getting distracted with other stuff, eventually I was playing it on my own, or as alone as you can be in an MMO.
Yeah.
But basically, I think for context, have you played FF14 at all?
For about 2 months.
Fair. Was it? Do you know roughly? You know the expansions. You have ARR, you have Heaven's Woods,
Yeah.
Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker.
Yep.
Basically, you said you played in 2 months, right? I went from Around Reborn to finishing the main story for Endwalker in the same time you played. That's I think I remember this very distinctly where I was talking to someone in chat in the party finder. There's someone that say, "Hey, how long did it take you to get here?" I said, "I just been playing for 2 months. I just got here." And it's like, "Wait, you did it in 2 months?" I was like, I was wondering, wait, is that a normal? Is that a normal uncommon? I feel like, wait, did I do something impressive there? Uh,
For me, that sounds impressive because I remember trying, like, I started going through the story. I am a person who hates questing. I know you said you appreciate the
uh,
story element of games. I am not that person. I generally ignore the story and I just kind of just go through the
oh yeah,
motions. Like, I got to do this, I got to click that, I got to move over there, I got to click that. Like, that's how I play. And so I think I might have got halfway through the first, like, whatever they call those chapters or whatever, and I was
I
like, you
think
know what?
it's called expansions. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have got halfway through the first one before I went out to the store and just bought the pass that like allowed me to skip all of it. So
Yeah. That's fair. To be fair, like I know this might be slightly off topic, but I
yeah,
think it goes into one of the things where how I play games, even beyond just the mechanic or story wise.
yeah,
Generally, a lot with how especially with MMOs, I found that I'm a role player. I'm a self-professed roleplay addict where I love to write, I love to world build, I love to feel what is my character in this world.
yeah.
And the thing is, with especially playing alone, because originally I was going to play Final Fantasy 14 with my boyfriend, although eventually when he left, I had to find a way to play the game that I wasn't necessarily as invested in without him. So one of my things I did do was roleplay. When I design my character, I really invest myself into who is my character, what is my journey in this world, and I found that in a way it was kind of annoying with Final Fantasy 14 specifically. Not necessarily because it's poorly written or anything, not at all, but it's more with how I think usually you get like dialogue options sometimes with things, but sometimes like I want to do something as a character that the game physically doesn't let me do,
Mm-hmm.
and and maybe that's just a me thing, but I feel like kind of annoying where it's like I want to make this character go in this direction where the game says no, you do this,
Yep. Yep.
and I think that goes back to Star Citizen where compared to where FF14 is more theme park MMO,
Yep.
and Star Citizen is a sandbox. The idea is that in a sandbox, I don't have the constraints of the story is telling me to do one thing. I can just do, okay, who is my character? I can work that out and actually just, okay, I can just do the things I want to do without necessarily having the game tell me, oh, you're doing X, Y, and Z, whereas more I want to do X, A, and Z, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. I have a background in tabletop role playing games. Whenever I was a teenager in my younger years, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and a bunch of other role playing. You can, well, my camera isn't showing it, but the shelf behind me, I actually still have some of my old role playing game books up there. And so,
I
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say because I say I've been watching your channel for a while. I think more or less since you started. Because
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things I love to do is edutainment videos, and one of the things I really like to do is having someone who, of like yourself, able to break down stuff that, let's say, at the Star Citizen Dev 6 try to explain to the community and break it down further in a way that, let's say, like layman people like myself can easier to understand what the process is going on.
Yeah.
And then I noticed like one of the stuff because like I recognize some of the books to the Call Cthulhu 7th edition because I own those books.
Yeah, nice.
Because I have a book. They're not in my room, but downstairs in the living room, I own Call Cthulhu 7th edition. Some of the expansion books. I have D&D 5e. I have Muse and Mastermind 2nd edition, and I have Cyberpunk 2020, which is kind of where my avatar is based off. It's actually based on my first Cyberpunk character.
Amazing. I never played Cyberpunk, but I did play a lot of Shadowrun. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard it. I know. I do know someone else who does play. As far as I understand, it's essentially Cyberpunk and D&D if you threw them in a blender.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's as far as I understand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But the point I was making with my role playing background is whenever I first got into MMOs, I think I got a similar sense to you. The first MMO I played was Ultima Online, and that was very sandboxy and allowed me to express myself in a way you're talking about, like Star Citizen does. But I went from that to Guild Wars 1, and that was kind of the first theme parkish MMO I had played. And I started to get that feeling like you're talking about, like the constraints are there. I can't really play this character like I want to play it. And then the next one after that was World of Warcraft, which was very on rails. And at that point, I started to kind of lose all hope that I was going to be able to bring my RPG background into this MMO world. And somewhere along the line, I just kind of lost that RPG part focus that I used to have. But I can relate to what you're saying.
Thank you.
And I could definitely see how Star Citizen could unlock that for people. And I'm really hoping that we get like a thriving community. I was just talking to somebody the other day about this on the Discord about, I would love to. I know games like Final Fantasy, they have a huge player base that is very into like the social aspect of the game, like decorating houses and outfits and all that kind of stuff that kind of goes hand in hand with role playing games and kind of exploring that side of the genre. And I'm hoping that Star Citizen is able to capture some of that. It feels like they are working towards that. I mean, we already got furniture for sale in the stores. They're talking about city building interiors, which lets me think, at someday in the future we're going to have apartments and all that kind of stuff. And I think it would be so cool to have that kind of a community interacting with like a hauling community who's carrying people from planet to planet and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent there, but.
Indeed. Don't worry, tangents are perfectly fine here.
So, what brought you into Star Citizen? Was it the fact that it was an MMO? Was there something else that kind of sparked your interest back in 2015?
I think, funny enough, it was a YouTuber I was watching that it was completely unrelated to Star Citizen. It was a chap called Muzak. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Mm-mm.
Basically, he was a TFT YouTuber back in the day, and one I watched regularly. And one day he did a video on Star Citizen, and I thought that it looked really cool. But I think the first thing that really got my interest was when he was showing off the ships. I think this was back when you had the hangar module,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was I don't remember if it's the original 300R or that. I think it's like the original 300i series. But he had it in red. But basically, he showed that where he could get into it. It was actually one-to-one scale inside to outside. Like it wasn't just a cockpit. Like
Yeah.
you've seen the games, but it's like even though you're like a massive spaceship, it's just you're just in. It's just a cockpit, and it doesn't feel like it's one-to-one scale with self.
Yep.
So, but I saw in Star Citizen, like, wow, this is actually a ship that actually makes sense of its outside to its inside, and that's what really drew me in. Where it's like, because I think because one of the games I used to play, as I was the Halo series, at least up to about 5 before I started losing interest. But one of the things when I remember when I was playing the original Combat Evolved, it was one of my things, like, you're shooting through the corridors of the ship, you're like blasting aliens and whatnot. But one of the things I always thought of, maybe it's just a me thing again, but I always thought, how does the ship actually work if it was like you could fly it? Like it actually you had all the stuff you would need to actually run the ship as it was. Like, what would it actually be like? And I think I had something close-ish when I played the original Star Wars Battlefront 2. Not the new one, the original one. And it had a game mode on that where you could. It's like a ship-to-ship battle where you could like land in an enemy ship and you could like destroy vital components like the shield generator, the power plant, and its like computer system.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. Something with Star Citizen is like, especially when they've talked about stuff like hacking and like sabotage, especially like damage to components, really reminds me of. Because one of my favorite things was to do was essentially be like a saboteur, like take like explosive charges going into enemy ship, put like bombs on like the shield core and stuff, and just watch it explode. And that was some of it. Again, maybe I date myself this. I always think of what's it called? I don't remember the character's name, but it's like this French mouse from Valiant, which is like this old like cartoon movie. And the idea is like this mouse is completely obsessed with sabotage, where it basically gets set off whenever. So all my head was really is just screaming sabotage whenever it just blow up a ship. But yeah, but going back to especially with like engineering, hacking, and stuff, and thinking that this is a game where you can have one-to-one shipping. You can like board a ship. You could like destroy certain components. You could sabotage it from within. If maybe you snuck inside before and you like set explosive charges in the like engineering bay, and suddenly it's like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that really gets my head going. And I think it's like to this day, like there's always other stuff that inspires me to get stuff, like with the Carrack, which is like a lot of people, like mine included. I think originally I bought that mainly because it reminded me of Titan AE, mainly the main ship from that called the Valkyrie. And I'm pretty sure you could look it up later, but it's like if looking at the Valkyrie and looking at the character, that you really just spot again that sort of imaginative of exploring, that thing of being able to go out and actually do stuff and be like live in the ship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just it's not just a ship with a cockpit. It's something where you can actually feel the ship. You can live in it. It's like it has a personality, and it's something you can really build on. Where like you can't really do with other ships in other space games. At least for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember getting that feeling the first time I laid eyes on it. I didn't start following Star Citizen, like I said, until 317. I had kind of ignored the whole thing. I remember a long time ago reading about the Kickstarter, and I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then I wasn't really doing a whole lot of PC gaming at that time, and so I just kind of ignored it. And but sometime after that, I remember getting into EVE Online, and EVE Online, like you said, has these massive ships, and then you get in it, and you just see the outside of the ship. You don't even see any of the interior. And so that was kind of like my space game experience. And so whenever I saw Star Citizen for the first time, a buddy of mine convinced me to download it and go into it. And I remember the first time he's like, "Here, I'm gonna get my ship out, get on it." And I walked in, I'm like, "Holy crap! This ship is like physicalized. Like this thing exists." And I was just blown away. And I remember maybe a year later, I showed a friend of mine the game, and I'm like, "Check this out!" And I think it was like maybe a Cutlass Black or something. I was showing him, and we loaded a rock into the back, and we were gonna go mining. And I remember him saying like it just blew him away that we had this ship and we could just open it up and we could put something else inside of it and we could all get inside. Like the whole experience just floored him. And I think as someone who has been in Star Citizen for a while now, it can start to almost be easy to take that stuff for granted, but it's quite the accomplishment.
Mm.
Okay, what about group play versus solo play? This is one of the first hot button issues I want to talk about. Any Spectrum, any day on Spectrum or Reddit or any number of places, you'll see this tug of war kind of erupting into sometimes flammable discussions. First, I want to know, like, I think you had already mentioned you solo play a lot, right?
Yeah, for the most part, I think not necessarily for any fault of my own, but I tend to solo play quite a lot. Although I'm still very open to group play, and that I am in a couple of walks where sometimes I am able to jump in and play with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's not necessarily always a consistent thing. Especially because given I think a lot of the orgs I'm in are American based, so time zone wise it tends to not work out as well.
Yeah.
But when I do get the chance, I always do enjoy group play when I can. Although maybe again, maybe it's just a me thing with how I tend to enjoy it. I tend to like a small group of maybe like a small group of friends, maybe like 4 to 6 people, enough to have a comfortable group experience without it being like 50 people in like a Discord, like all shouting at one. I'm sure you've had that plenty of
Oh, yeah.
times.
Yeah, communications is a challenge.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely had one time in one of the orgs. I think this actually went on another person's video, but I was playing someone else's character for a org mission, and because it's all on the same channel, you cannot hear anything. I had to like shout pretty much into my microphone. It's like, where am I going? Like, because I can't hear the instructions of where I'm meant to be taking the ship. Because there's so many people talking at once. It's like I need clear directions. I'm the helmswoman. I need clear directions.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
and I think I eventually ended up with us. I think we went to Security Coast Korea. We got shot up. I don't know how. I think either someone had a crime stat, or I think there was a bug at the time where if you were in combat and you jumped away, it would flag your ship as hostile to station turrets. So on instinct, I went back to Seraphim just to end up with the station fired at us and destroyed the ship. And it's like, oh, that was not my proudest moment.
Yeah, we've definitely experienced what you're describing. I think it's interesting because Star Citizen blends so many different genres. The classic MMO genre with more of the military like games like Call of Duty and whatever. And I think for my group, like a lot of us came from classic MMO games like World of Warcraft, New World, Guild Wars, those types of games in which a voice platform like Discord was sufficient, even if you had large number like 40 or 50 players in a channel, because if you had that many people in a channel, you were doing a raid. And one thing that was interesting about a raid is like everybody could shut up except the raid leader, and everybody else had to go into listen mode. And so I think it became pretty kind of just automatic for people to know when it was okay to talk and when it was okay, or when they just had to zip it and listen. And it worked for those types of games. But I think the people who played Battlefield, Call of Duty, all those types of games, they think they might have a leg up in something like Star Citizen when it comes to comms, because what we've found is like you can't just have one person talking in a large Star Citizen operation. Like you need multiple inputs coming from all. So we've actually started migrating away from Discord into something like TeamSpeak, just because it's so hard to compartmentalize all the different pockets of communication that need to happen. But that's another tangent. But interesting. Do you think that? So on the opposite sides of this tug of war is usually people who want very difficult group focused content, and the other side who's like, well, everything needs to be solo player accessible. You think? Do you align with one or the other? Or are you somewhere in the middle?
I think personally, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's like in general, having content that appeals to everyone is fine. It's like you need something for big org play to have something to strive for, but you know, for solo players, that you want something for solo players to be able to have that journey, like where in whatever they're doing, to have a way to either to contribute to either bigger organizations or be able to have their own personal goal. Like for me personally, I would like to run a small org and those big space stations they showed off last season.
Yeah.
I think I like something like that. Just a solo. Well, I'm not saying solo as in like a single person runs the entire station, but more like a small org, just like running a station where. Because certainly I run an org that helps people that is there as a kind of support org, either for escorts, for medical rescue, for defending haulers as they travel. Someone that can be there as a supportive force in the universe. That's kind of my personal goal. And again, everyone's personal goal is going to be different, either if you're part of a big org or even if you want to just be like, hey, I want to be a miner that knows where to get the best quality materials, and I know exactly how to get them. But I think having everything be accessible to the solo, but it's a difficult thing to balance because sometimes it's like, well, I think I saw the last part of this was like we were talking about doing Awakening, where originally you could not get the high sorry, so you could not get the highest tier components or materials, whatever, unless you went into the sort of PvP zones, like the deep depth, if I'm understanding.
Yep.
And I think I saw one of the recent changes that they did make those high tier stuff available to PVE. But again, that's had the side effect where PvPers are now able to just, without any consequence, get these materials as well. And then it ends up being, well, what's the point of this? I think that's it. With things being available for every solo, I think it's almost the way you're losing the journey. If everything can just be, even if it's somewhat difficult to get, you're losing the point of, especially stuff like crafting is like you have up to about tier 5 for ships. Oh, this is what I started calling tier 35, which is like a ship with tier 5 with tier 3 everything. And it's like if there's no risk involved, there's like, okay, if you had like a journey, or if you read a book or you've read a video game, like the most key part of any story isn't necessarily just, oh, you just went to a place, got the thing, and came back. It's more the misadventure that maybe you got shot upon by pirates, maybe you got damaged during a solar flare, and you have to like repair components, or like maybe you got stranded and you have to go find food and water. It's not necessarily just, oh, it's just a peaceful journey. It's the adventures you have on that journey that makes it memorable. I think in a way, if you lose the rest, you lose the ability to have that journey. You lose sight of what made it matter in the first place. If that makes sense, of course.
Makes perfect sense. Matches a lot of the way I think about these things. You had mentioned a small org creating a space station in Star Citizen, and I think all the time. Obviously, you've probably seen the calls on Spectrum and the discussions around, should Star Citizen have PVE servers, because people are already starting. I remember it wasn't long after Star Citizen's last Citizen Comm where they were talking about the space stations and the conflict that came with it, and the way bases were going to work and the way base raids were going to work. That people immediately started saying that they're trying to turn Star Citizen into whatever the games are, where people can take your stuff offline and all that other stuff. But whenever that PVE discussion kind of flared up, I couldn't help but think like, very much like Dune. What would be the point? Like if you could just go through Star Citizen and craft your space station and then kind of sit there in a space station, you never had to worry about conflict. I mean, wouldn't that get boring? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I yeah, I would think that would be rather boring if it's like, sure, you have all this stuff, but then it's like it's like the man who has everything. It's like when you have everything, what's the point? Like
Yeah,
that you've reached the apex. You've not there's nothing more to really strive for once you've hit that point.
yeah,
And the whole argument of PvE versus PvP servers, I think, me in my honest opinion, I think it depends on how the game is meant to be designed. Like, if stuff is like, let's say with Final Fantasy, it's designed as mainly a cooperative. But let's call it PvE experience, where the PvP is very much segmented to its own thing. I
hmm
mean, it's called the Wolf Den. Well, but for the most part, Final Fantasy XIV is strictly a more or less PvE party-focused experience, and it's designed from the ground up to be that experience. If you try to combine PvE and PvP in something like Final Fantasy VIII, it just doesn't work because it's not built for that.
yeah,
But with Star Citizen, from the ground up, it's being designed with that in mind. Even at the during that same panel with the space station, they went over what is this game for, and the idea is for everyone from PvPers to PvEers to people who don't want to be involved with stuff. It it does not matter. It's designed from the ground up to be allow for everyone to be involved in the universe in their own way and have their own story.
yeah,
And but because of that, if when you're trying to discuss like, oh, this should have PVE servers or PvP should be its own server, it's like the problem with that is that because of how the mechanics are being designed and thought out, and it's nothing new. This has been part of the project ever since I started and since the original Kickstarter. But the problem is like when you're building a base where everyone, PvP and PvE, need to interact together, if you start separating parts of the game off from each other, then there's critical parts of the structure that don't work because Star Citizen is not being designed with separate PvE versus PvP in mind. It's designed for everyone to be able to contribute to each other, have this kind of cycle where, let's say, for example, if you're PvPer, like you're either as a bounty hunter or a pirate, whichever takes your fancy, like, you need to keep yourself stocked with the best gear or best intel. To do that, you need to be on good terms with people who can craft your ammo, craft your ship components and weapons, or being good with haulers who can bring you cargo that you need to, as I to even like information brokers, because that's another thing that we haven't seen yet, but it's something that is being discussed. Is being able to share data and as if you want, like, say you're a bounty hunter or pirate, you're looking for a specific mark. As you need to be on good terms with these non-combative data brokers, because otherwise you're not getting jack shit with anything.
yeah,
Because can you imagine if like if you're like a PvP, it's like, oh yeah, I don't need PvEs or non-combat people. What are they going to do to me? And then find out that they can't find anyone, or it's like no one's willing to fix their stuff or give them upgrades because the PvPers and non-combative players are not willing to deal with someone who is going to actively go against them. When it's like, okay, it's like, oh, the PvP is like, well, I can just kill people whenever I want, and then PvP is a no. Oh, do you like having an upgraded ship with max damage ammo and having all the information at your fingertips? Well, be nice to us. But it's the kind of thing. It's I scratch your back, you scratch mine in return.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of what Star Citizen is looking to do. Is that sort of secretarial loop of if you scratch the PvE's back, they will scratch yours by giving you someone to go PvP with,
yep,
and it becomes this sort of cycle where PvP is actually feels like something that actually matters rather than actually just what it is right now, where it can be a mix of griefing and people just PvPing because they're bored, not because it's actually a loop that actually rewards everyone.
Yeah, I hope that Star Citizen nails exactly what you're talking about, because I used to play EVE Online, and back when I played, I don't know if this is still true today, but when I played, EVE Online really did what you're talking about well, where they really brought together the PVE and the PvP crowd. Because if you were in an organization that was warring in the very PvP centric areas, like, you wanted a bunch of miners for the resources to replace the things that you were losing, and so forth. And I thought it really did that well, and I hope Star Citizen can replicate that or improve upon it. One of the things I really liked about the space station talk that you were mentioning was that it felt to me like the way they were implementing space station raids was kind of a nice middle ground, where, like, in much the same way that I expect that as organizations we will compete for resources in the verse, like for mining rocks and whatever. It felt like the way they were setting up conflict on space stations was they were turning it into more resource competition. Not necessarily that you had to worry about your space station being destroyed, but people could board it and steal the resources that you were collecting and gathering there, which is just another way of, like, expanding that resource competition in the game, which I expect most of the competition to be about. But I thought that was cool too. On the group thing, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about the group play. Like, how do you feel about NPC crew and AI blades, and how that intersects with, whatever the ship meta might be versus, solo accessibility?
I think because we know we're not getting NPC crew till post 1.0. That we know for sure.
Yeah.
AI blades are going to be interesting in terms of, like, sure, they will improve solo ability. It's like, but I don't imagine they will ever be as useful or as flexible as a player crew. Even when we do get NPC crew, I feel like, I think I talked about this with someone either on Discord or with my boyfriend, but one of the things is that either with AI blades or with NPC, no matter how well they're implemented, let's say we had NPC crew, right? Let's say we had equal ships. Let's say one interest fully crewed with NPC crew, and you had another one that's with players. One of the things is that an NPC crew cannot do is be flexible. Let's say that you have an NPC who's just a gunner. You hire them. They are. I think if I recall, there's like different tiers of, like, NPC where they go from, like, rookie to being like a commander, and they have different levels of experience with certain roles. Let's say you got like 5-star gunners on all your stuff, right? What happens if that turret is destroyed? What is that NPC going to do? Because it's not even if it's a delay, or the player controlling the main ship has to, like, physically input commands or verbally produce commands using VoIP about, hey, NPC, go to X area. That it's going to take some time for them to actually like, even if it's programmed in, they have to actually think, okay, I have to go from X to Y and have to change my behavior from this to that. Or they may just be completely inflexible, where the gunner's like, I can't help in engineering. I'm a gunner. I just shoot things. Where if you had, like, a player, even if they don't have a lot of experience in, like, engineering, if their turret got blown up for whatever reason, you could, if you're on Discord or TeamSpeak or wherever, you can just, like, hey, I need engineering needs an extra hand. I know you're not the best in engineering, but any help down there to maintain systems is priority. So get down there. And then the player's like, okay, boss, we'll get to it. And they can go and they can help. I think that'd be the main difference between an NPC crew and a player crew, is that a NPC crew will buckle under its own inflexibility. And I think in an equal fight between an Idris of an NPC crew and a player crew will always win, because they have the ability to be flexible and make snap decisions. Where the NPCs, even if you have one person controlling all of them, is going to be utter chaos if and even if you put in commands or verbally tell the NPC commands, there's no guarantee that the NPC can either do that job, or even if they do, they have to actually, the server has to keep up with the the thought logic, be able to actually tell the NPC, okay, go from this to that and go to here. And that's going to be kind of a difficult thing for NPCs to keep up with.
Yeah.
I think it will benefit solo players who don't necessarily either have a lot of people to interact with or just want to do the solo experience. But I think there's going to be a certain point where even if you wanted to do an entire AI Blade or NPC crew run, a fully played ship is always going to be better overall, in my opinion, than AI Blades and NPC crew, right? Of course, they will be balanced and stuff like where I imagine stuff like AI Blades got either power draw from the main power system where you have less of those power pips to work with, to, if I recall, again, I could be wrong. Well, I vaguely remember if one of the things says that AI blades or turret blades, wherever they will have certain specializations where, if they have a turret blade and it's only designed for targeting fighters within a 1,000-kilometer range, that they were, and that turret will still fight over stuff, but they will always prioritize fighters within that range. And the thing is that if you have AI blades that have different specializations, you can't necessarily control what they do at any one time, unless you change out the blade for something. Okay, this blade isn't working for how I am playing. I need to switch it out for something that maybe deals with heavy fighters or maybe deals with ordnance. But you have to make conscious choices about what you're sacrificing in exchange for those AI blades.
Yeah.
Or a secret. I think those are generally my thoughts on the AI Blade NPC crew discussion.
I agree that it will probably be pretty straightforward for them to make it so that a fully crewed ship will be better than a ship running all AI blades. My only question is, will a fully crewed ship be better than 5 of those ships running AI blades? That's my question.
Certainly a fun question, but again, what's it at a certain number point that even if you threw it against 100 AI blades versus one person, the numbers are just going to make up the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's not necessarily proving that AI blades are better. It's just proving you have more ships in a fleet that are AI bladed to the point where, but again, anyone could do that, and that's not necessarily a choice of skill. That's just more you've just surrounded someone 5-1.
Yeah.
Well, again, if you scaled that up to 5 people with fully player crewed ships versus 5 people in AI blades, then numbers are basically, if numbers are not a factor of outnumbering someone 5-1, then again, I do not see how a player could not necessarily overcome an AI, even if it's say 5-1. Let's say okay, they're running AI blades, they're not necessarily going to come up with more unorthodox ways of anyway. Let's say if an Idris versus 5 Polarises or AI bladed or chocked to hell. And let's say the player crew is okay, we're outnumbered, but we're not outmatched in terms of skill. And let's say the Idris performs a boarding party. Let's say, okay, we're gonna damage one of the Polaris's hangar bay so it's forced open. Or maybe they even hack it. When hacking it, they say, okay, that's one of the person who's in charge of support. Okay, you got hack open that hangar bay. We're gonna send a boarding party in, sabotage the power supply, and basically the whole shipment just goes dead.
Yeah.
And say there's one person on that ship, and they're relying on their AI blades to run everything. If their power goes out, they're basically useless.
Yep.
As basically, I'm very sure, at least in my head, is players will always find a way to overcome the obstacles in front of them, even if it is a 5-1. Because then, if you know the flaws in something, so the AI blades that they can target certain things. So they're not going to target players because they're going to be more focused either shooting down missiles or fighting that the big capital ship in front of them. They're not players that can switch targets to play a boarding party trying to get board them.
Yep.
And again, that's why I think the critical point is that no matter how good you make AI blades, or with nerfs and downsides notwithstanding, I think the fact that players are always going to be able to outthink the AI better than the AI can overpower them if you just bought like 5 Polarizes.
Makes sense. Have you had many PvP encounters in Star Citizen?
I've had my fair few, that's for sure.
Yeah. Were there any like that you remember fondly versus unfondly? I mean, have you had good ones, bad ones, or has your experience mostly been positive?
I've had a mix. I know. I think this is from the earlier days. I know one of the times I think this is when Korea got first introduced. I think this is how far we're going back. But one of the things is that Korea was a hotspot for PvP, I'll say at the time. I don't think it's as popular now, but at the time it was if you want PvP, that's the place to go. And I think one of the things was that I think it was part of a Free Fire event. I don't recall, but I think I was using the Hornet Ghost, the original one, and I feel I came in. I think I just came in just to look around because I was just like oh, okay, this is a new place. Just look. I think there was like multiple fighters, all like fight, and I just got pinged as like, oh, this is interesting. I just been pinged by multiple fighters. One of the things I did was that I managed to avoid them so well. I managed to escape. I think I got in chat. I was like, wow, okay, you're really good at flying this thing. I was like, okay. I was like, finally, I'm a really good fighter, or at least when I want to be. I think for the most part, I think there's a thing that I have with PvP. Is like, even though I mostly do PvE, I'm not against PvP at all. I was like, I think the problem with PvP comes from either sometimes because if I'm not in the mood for it, especially, which is a lot of the time, or that sometimes I am in the mood for PvP, I'm like, okay, fine, let's go. But sometimes it's like, you know what, I just want to get X done, or that either I want to hold some cargo, or I just want to do something on my own. For the most part, I can't do that, even in current day. I think it's less to do with PvP and more. I think I said this a couple of times, especially when I've seen other sausage. I think the one that comes to mind mainly is a Adventure one. It's less PvP itself and more with the attitude of PvPers themselves. Generally, because again, this is just my opinion, but generally PvPers, especially in Star Citizen, come across as kind of toxic and elitist, and they do not come across as people who want to welcome other people. They're more, you are someone as target practice, not necessarily someone who I want to have a match with. And I think excuse me. I think that's what bothers me more than anything is that it does not feel like a welcoming place to be in doing PvP in Star Citizen because the community around PvP does not feel great. And as I said, I can give an example of someone who, I know this isn't related to Stossen, but I'll probably bring it back around. But another YouTuber I watch on a regular called Chaserbo, he does mainly Dark Souls 3 and or currently Elden Ring kind of PvP focused invasions. But the thing is like whenever, again, I even fought against him once. Because I think I was in a video with him because I was a hunter, which are called in whenever invaders come into someone else's world and you can fight them. And generally, Chaserbo's attitude towards PvP is generally it's not necessarily I'm out to kill them to ruin their fun. It's more he does it for fun. But it's nothing malicious. It's so that he's doing it as a test of skill. It's a test of how they overcoming the odds. It's like even if he sees a team of 3 people and hunters, it's more. It's no, oh no, they're all ganking me. It's more, bring it on, let's go. And he tends to win a lot of these matches. But and I think it's like if Sovereign Imperial was more about that, where it didn't feel like you're being targeted for any malicious reason. It's more because this is a test of skill. This is a test of this is my skill against yours. So how can we? Who will come up on top? Or even if stuff like piracy, where it's more if it. Even though I've seen a lot of it, where I think it goes toward the unfondly memories, where I was doing something completely unrelated. I think I was doing a holy mission. I think I had illegal cargo on board at the time because like I thought, well, I can't take this to anywhere legal, and the only place I know to take this is one of the scrapyards that can take them. And I remember, I think it's either I was just getting back because the sell button had bugged. I was like, you know, classic Star Citizen stuff. But one of the things that happened is that I was about to take off when I think someone in a damn, the name is Skitter. I think it's a Redeemer bomber, I believe. I say. But basically, I got torpedo out the sky, and basically he said, "Oh, I was doing pirating." That was what the reply is. Said that's not pirating. You didn't get anything of value, and I was saying, and I think that's kind of the thing that annoyed me because it's more pirating felt at that point like an excuse, not a actual thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it felt like it was like when I think pirating, I'm sure you can play it. Pirating, you think like so you get surrounded and maybe you're being drowned. It's like, hey, whether either give us your loot or we'll take your lives or something like that. Something that is more like you're getting something out of it as a pirate. That either you're taking on money, cargo, valuables, whatever. But there's more to the pirating than just, oh, I've killed you. That's and I was like, and if someone replies, well, that's not pirating. Well, no, oh no, it definitely is. It's like that's not pirating. And eventually, you probably agree with that. Is that pirating needs to feel more than just, oh, you just shot someone in the sky. That it and I think that's probably part of the thing. What it's less. I think the problem with PvP in Spartan as it is now is less to do with PvP. Is the problem and more the systems to regulate and actually make them functional game loops is not there. Like we don't have proper system security. We don't have reputation working. That there's less consequence for PvPers to just shoot, blast everything, and just go on with their day. And I think that's just more a result of Salsa being unfinished in an alpha, which I know triggers a lot of people. But that's honestly what it is that it is not finished. It's still currently in development and it's still missing a lot of features. And even if people say, oh, it shouldn't be called an alpha, well, what else do you call starters if not an alpha?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there with the fact that the game is alpha and there is really no reason to PvP, and so people who are interested in it are just going to get it however they can. And unfortunately, that's just going to be disrupting what people were trying to do. I think that whenever the game is in a finished state and we have an economic backbone to the game, that then there might be economic motives to some of this stuff, at least for PvPers who are associated with larger orgs, and those orgs are trying to get ahead. I mean, obviously, it seems obvious to me that they will deploy their warriors in such a way that it's propelling the guild ahead, and so there will be economic reasons behind those decisions. You're always going to have your murder hobos, I think, that just want to ruin somebody's day, and unfortunately,
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever get rid of murder hobos or griefers. Basically, because like no matter how well the security and the reputation and Death of Spaceman is implemented, even if it's like perfectly executed, you will always have people out there that will always try to ruin someone else's fun just because that's what they want to do. They just want to ruin people's fun just for no other reason besides that's what they want to do, and you're not going to get rid of them no matter what. Because there is always that crowd out there that wants to destroy people's fun. Whatever. Because and again, griefers will not go away. They are essentially a persistent part of any MMO that allows for PvP or anything. Basically, or even normal PVE servers. Because I think this is something else that the whole PVE versus PvP argument kind of misses. Like even a completely PvP thing, you could still screw over people in a fully PvE setting. Let's say like if you're doing like hauling and there's like a particular commodity, well, you could just buy up all the commodities and essentially control the market and force people to do whatever you want. That's still technically a form of griefing in a game that in a PvE server, air quote, that does not allow for you to be killed.
Oh my gosh, I
Uh,
could not agree more.
yeah, and I think that's kind of thing because I think people say, "Oh, if we're in a PvE server, we'll be safe. We won't lose all our progress." It's like, no, griefers will just find more ways to screw you over that does not involve killing you. In a way, it could be even argued in a way that in a PvE server, griefers are a fate worse than death. They will make your lives hell for no reason besides. Okay, you want to hide in a PvE server? We'll just find ways to make your life miserable.
So true.
I think that's
Yeah. I was just gonna say some of the most frustrating griefing and whatever you want to call it that I've experienced has been in PVE areas and PVE servers. It never ceases to amaze me how creative that they can get. I've played a lot of the Ashes of Creation alpha, and Ashes of Creation is actually a PvP game, but it has a very strict and punishing flagging system at the moment. So punishing that most people won't flag. And so they find creative ways of griefing you without flagging. And I think it's even more frustrating to be griefed by somebody that you cannot retaliate against. At least in a PvP game where they're griefing you with PvP mechanics, like you can retaliate. But in some of these PvE situations, it's like they've screwed over your entire group and there's nothing you would do about it. That's frustrating.
Oh yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the things that Star Citizen can be different on because it is I'm not going to even call it a PvP game. I'm going to say a universal player game. Well, one of the basic, and in that sort of game, you could either retaliate yourself. You could. It's like let's say like past this is past 1.0. We have whatever you're still being attacked. You could call either a org that specializes in security or radio in and say, "Hey, I'm under attack." Because like, you could send out missions to bounty hunters and so they say, "Hey, I'm under attack," because they can come and help you. It's like the in Star Citizen, if when it's done right, there are going to be so many ways to actually protect yourself in Star Citizen. I don't see it necessarily being a problem where PvP and PvE mix when you have the option to either defend yourself, call in backup, have NPC security, and even then you have. And I know this is similar in Eve because I haven't played Eve personally, but I understand that there is like high sec, low sec, null sec, and I know that's a mechanic in Eve that Star Citizen seems to be mimicking with when they discussed it in the 1.0 presentation. And I think they have that thing where you have like Stanton, for example, that's like a high sec area. Let's presume it's as intended, not as it is now, but how it's intended to be is that where if you try, yes, you can PvP in Stanton, but you're gonna have the local security force coming after you. You could the person you're attacking can defend themselves, or they can raid you for backup, send out missions for bounty hunters to come attack you. So at least if you're going to pirate in Stanton, you have to be a lot more planned out and careful about how you're going about it. Where if you go for like something like Pyro, which is like NorSec, that you don't have necessarily that option to call in backup, at least not easily, and there isn't really security forces out there that can help you. So if you're going to like something like a Norsex area like Pyro, you need to be able to plan out as the PVE. You have to be able to plan out. Okay, I'm going to a very high risk area. Should I get escorts? Do I need to bring additional crew to man guns just to make sure that this goes that the whole main mission goes smoothly? Or especially even with environmental hazards, because in Pyro we're meant to have the solar flares. And it's like, okay, do I need to bring extra supplies to make sure I can repair my ship in case we get engaged with a solar flare that fries the system? I think all these things is something that, again, either with PvP or PvE, it's like both the system and features that are going to be in the game at the time when it's finished, they all have to be kept in mind about how you're going to go about a journey. Which again kind of goes back to what I said earlier, where the journey is the adventures you have in between the journey, not necessarily just the destination. And you can have like stuff where you have this back and forth between PvEers doing their thing, but having to plan out, okay, do they need extra protection for this mission? Are they going to risk going solo and being able to get to their location within relative safely if they're in a high sec area? Versus, okay, this cargo needs to go through Pyro to get to another, let's say Castra. But you know for a fact that Pyro is a high risk area where has events that can shut your ship down. So then, okay, do you need to bring escorts? Do you need to bring an engineer on board to make sure that your systems can be kept up and you can have drain out all that? Excuse me. You can get out all the distortion damage from the systems. Basically, there's a lot of things that can be considered that at the moment we don't need to consider it because it's not really a problem. But this is kind of my thing. It's like maybe it's either reading into stuff, but I think at least with CIG, because they have access to more stuff than we do, and we can only look from an outside perspective, even if we do have expertise on, or we can make educated guesses, but we can't necessarily know exactly one-to-one what's going on. I think the idea is like what CG has is that they have a much broader perspective about what needs to work. Which way I usually see a lot of stuff. I think I put up in one of your comments one time was like, because I see a bunch of stuff saying, well, oh, the devs should be made to play the game to like suffer like we are, and it's like, and I think like I think they do, and I've seen sort of, oh, they shouldn't do it with their admin powers on. It's like that isn't the point. The point is that I'd rather have them focus on, doing their dev part of their job and actually fix the game, rather than just play the game and be made to suffer just because people want to feel vindicated.
Yeah.
And that's something that always confuses me because I still see it even today. It's like, oh, like CIG is lazy and a bone idol. I think it's like seeing. I even referenced one of your videos about I think it's when they started going over the year of stability. I think one of the things you showed off is that we went from maybe about 50-ish, 40, 50-ish bug fixes at a patch to when this announcement took place, and I think within the first month or so, the amount of them was doubled. Playability, the stability of the game was improving as well as the amount of bug fixes going up.
Mm-hmm.
So even as a player, it may not feel like much is changing. I think Sergio being lazy is definitely not something I would presume there is, considering just from evidence, it's not even like I'm white knighting for Sergio. Oh, I would defend them. No, I'm certainly not going to defend stuff like the Flight Blaze fiasco or feed.18, the whole mess up that happened with that. But again, no one is going to be perfect. And I say, CJ is certainly not perfect when it comes to everything they've handled. It's not. But it's more the fact that what I have to think of is more I need to see the forest for the trees. It's more have that bigger perspective. It's not what's in front of me right now that's shocking, and more where is this going? Where does this need to be to make it the game we all want it to be? It's like, yes, there's going to be growing pains in between that. and you can't really control what happens in the meantime. Because something else, I know, maybe I'm going off topic. But there was another thing is that it was talking about the flight model, which is a divisive topic for, I know, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Personally, it's one of those things where I think I saw Avenger 1 reacting to, I think, the most recent thing when they were discussing the flight model. And I saw one of the things was that he skipped over, I think, like Yoki Kai, when he was explaining about how in the new flight model, heavy fighters were a bit too tanky for how they were flying. And they were considering nerfing their health, although they even specified in that very episode, they said that they're considering it, but they're not. It wasn't just they're going to nerf health for heavy fighters. More they're testing to see is this health pool the right amount for a heavy fighter? Does it need nerfing? Does it need buffing? And again, because one of the things they probably have access to that we don't in the current flight model is stuff like armor, because that's probably something that I don't see a lot of people discussing with the new flight model. Is that they probably have access to engineering with armor that can mitigate damage, and maybe when you conclude the HP of a heavy fighter with armor, maybe they are too tanky for what their role is meant to be.
Yeah.
We don't know, but this is kind of thing is like that. I saw Avenger 1 go on a massive tangent that they're going to be nerfing heavy and it's all bad. It's like, you know, he completely looked over the point where he said the new flight model, not the current flight model as it stood, but more the future, what is coming. I think some people get too focused on the state of the PU as it stands, which is not perfect. Obviously, it has bugs. We got crashes to desktop. Yeah, no one's going to say Star Citizen as it stands is a perfect game. I doubt anyone is going to claim that. But I think a lot of people miss the point that this is an alpha in development. There is stuff that we do not have access to. The things are coming down the pipeline that are being tested or being considered. I think one of the other things with the flight model was that the tuning ships not for the flight model we have, but the one we're getting. Which is why a lot of people are like, well, why are you changing it to be like this, where it doesn't? Is it it's a nerf, or is it? Well, we don't have access to that new flight model. Maybe these changes are either necessary or they're needed to make sure that they work with the new flight model. Like I said, it's less. And sometimes I got told, well, you shouldn't take CIG's word for granted. That they shouldn't be trusted, and like, but at the same time, I find it ironic that these people are asking me to in the community, not everyone, but some people I've talked to in the community where they've asked me, that I should trust what they say because no, because CIG can't be trusted. But it's more like I find I to a point I could agree, sure. Don't necessarily trust anyone's opinion offhand, but at the same time, disregarding everything CIG says, and then being suddenly surprised when something new comes up, and it's like, well, where did this come from? I was like, no, they said this like, I don't know, a week ago, and it's like, I think disregarding what CIG has to say is just as detrimental as not listening to the community. I think sometimes the community does have valid points, but I think the points need to be made from a perspective of knowing what's coming and actually providing constructive feedback. Because all of it tends to be, Seiji's lazy, they don't want the doing, or Chris Roberts needs to be like kicked off the CAO seat for God knows what reason. It's just a lot of like, those are just people venting into the void, in my opinion. They're frustrated and angry, and they want something to vent out, but they aren't providing anything that's actually benefiting the game. There's nothing that actually can be worked on.
Yeah.
But you have people, yeah.
No, a lot of fair points there. I think I see the sentiment a lot that, like, you know, if it's not in our hands, it doesn't exist. I see that mentality a lot whenever you say, like, you know, there's tuning and adjustments being made for the state of the game 6 months or 12 months from now, and you'll get that reaction like, don't believe that. We know it's not in our hands. We can't even talk about it. But I've seen a lot of unfinished software. I've worked on a lot of unfinished software. Like, I know how software develops and reaches its final state. And that, yeah, I absolutely am sure that behind the scenes, CIG is testing, like you said, with engineering, with armor, with those things. They're not ready for us yet, but for a dev who understands what's broken, what's not broken, what's ready to be tested, what's not, like they are definitely interacting with those systems long before we do. So good points.
I think I recall. Yeah, because I think I recalled Jared said one of the end. Cause I think I saw it clipped from Space Tomato. I was like, but he should have at the end of one of the Inside Starters, and Jared even said that when they were looking for jobs for the gameplay team, but the ones that show off all the features and stuff in development, it says that they have to work in really broken builds, like even worse than what even Kotick gets.
Yeah.
So I think it's the whole one I said earlier about the comment like, oh, the CG don't play the game. I'm fairly sure they do, and I'm fairly sure they have a lot more reasons to hate it than you do, because they have to play with it much more bugs, much more things broken than anyone ever gets to see before it even hits either Carty. And I think it's like I said, I think it's a disingenuous thing to say that they don't play the game. But for the most part they do. At least with like QA and the gameplay capture team, they're the ones who like going through the mud to trying to make the game look good for when it's on Inside Star Citizen.
Yeah.
But it's like, but yeah, it was never an argument I ever really understood of. Oh, the CG should play the game to be miserable. Where it's like that doesn't fix anything. Let the devs, do their job, which is why, again, a lot of people say, oh, there's less content about. Well, yeah, because they've had to pivot to go to stability and bug fix. They don't want to take dev time away from that.
Yeah.
To essentially plastate the community with questions that are basically can be answered by we're working on it, and we would rather get back to fixing the game rather than being here to answer the question, which is we're working on it.
Yep. MMOs more broadly have, over the past, I don't know, maybe a decade at this point, they keep coming out, they keep getting a lot of attention, a lot of players, and then they keep dying off very quickly. I'm thinking about things like New World, Throne and Liberty. Those are some of the most recent MMO releases we've seen, but there's been a couple others. The names are escaping me. My question is, like, do you have any opinions on why, or does the MMO recipe in general need to change in some way? Do you think Star Citizen is changing the recipe?
I think it's certainly making a lot of people question stuff. I don't think necessarily MMOs are dead as a lot of popular titles. I think it's more. I think it's like with anything, things change. Things will evolve and change over time. I think what players want change over time. I think sometimes it's like, especially if you reach the end goal of an MMO and it's that you run out of either things you personally want to do, like maybe you've hit your personal goal where you got, let's say, I'll probably use Final Fantasy as the only other MMO I have experienced. Let's say my experience with the game was I wanted to reach the end of the game at the time, which was Endwalker, and after that point, I quit mainly because I hit the goal I wanted to do. I got all the cosmetics I wanted for my character to look the way I wanted to when I wrote them out in a backstory. But I mean, it's like sometimes people just lose interest. And I think I've even said this to a couple of people when people vented about Star Citizen. Sometimes it's just healthy to take a break.
Yeah.
There were so many games out there. And I think especially if you especially get heated about it, not saying don't get worked up about stuff, because again, there are a lot of people who are very passionate about Star Citizen. And that's entirely reasonable because it's the game that fans built. It's the game that everyone wants the game to be, but sometimes you get overheated, you can get worked up, and I feel like sometimes it's just take a break, breathe, like give yourself time to actually breathe, calm down and basically maybe come back maybe later and take things in with a new perspective. Like, I mean, I don't play Star Citizen religiously. Sometimes I play it every so often, especially with like events like the new resource drive. Sometimes I play to look up new stuff, but sometimes there are other games I want to play. So I've been playing Mecha Break recently because which has been a pretty fun sort of casual jump in mecha shooter, and that's been great. I say it has its own problems probably, but for the most part, it's like being able to like take breaks, come back to something, and be able to like breathe. I'm like, okay, let's try and have a more open mind because it's like, especially if you get angry with something, is that you get very tunnel vision. You get very narrow focus onto this is the problem I have, and as I want everyone on like the internet to know about it, I want to like scream it on Reddit and Spectrum and anyone who will give a damn, or people who even don't. But I think the point is like is being able to like take a step back, breathe, and then come back with probably more freshened eyes to be able to like actually kind of work out what you don't like and be able to actually give better feedback on why you don't like something or what does work, what doesn't work, and be able to actually format your thoughts properly.
What about monetization? Another hot topic.
Certainly is. Of course, I was saying there have been many good videos out there about pay to win, about how nebulous a topic it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I believe I believe one of what's it? That's it. Was it Josh Shaver? I know he has a video on play for win and basically how nebulous a topic that actually is. Especially because I kind of think in one of his videos he talks about how there's like different levels of what people consider pay for win, or pay to win. Sorry, and basically there's like a certain point. It's like, is there a certain point where it becomes pay for win? Is there stuff where we sort of say, okay, we're fine with this? I think again, each game is going to have their own different monetization models. It's like where stuff is just going to be purely cosmetic. There's some stuff will be fully pay. You can pay. You can just pay for power, and there's no way for free player to catch up with that. There's bits in the middle. Currently, as I definitely am the camp of I prefer to just be either cosmetic, like stuff, basically stuff like what we have now, kind of with like ship paints or like armor paints or whatever, stuff that doesn't impact the game in terms of it overrides your skill with someone else's money. And yeah, some people say, "Oh, you can buy ships in game. They're the pay to win." And I argue that don't. I especially remember when uh, I think it was in recent times when I think they were changing stuff with capital ships, and there was a lot of like worry in the community. Like, how are we going to run the ship solo? I was like, they're not designed to. Because if you look on the page for like say like the Idris or the Polaris, they need like between 12 and 25 people just to run effectively.
Yeah.
But this is presuming you have stuff like engineers, you have gunners, you have crew, you have support crew, you have the pilot. And I think that's what a lot of what I see with a lot of people buying these big ships and is that they aren't really considering is like these are not ships designed to be solo run. Are they? Yes, technically you can fly the Idris solo. There's nothing stopping you doing that, but it's more the fact that if you cannot be in multiple places away, if you come under attack, I'd say like you have like an ion when it's like blasting through the shields to actually damage your components. Yeah, you have to get out your ship at the pilot seat, run all the way down to the engineering bay, which is not a short trip. Have to fix whatever's going on, and then go back. And then by the time you get back, something else could be blown out. So it's like you cannot do that solo.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to, there's only so much a single person can do. And I think that goes into the ships I like, is stuff like the Carrack Galaxy, the Arastra, and the Perseus, all of them have about a 4 to 6 crew requirement. Because I feel for me that again, because I mentioned this earlier, because I like a small group of people to play with. And I feel like 4 to 6 people is a reasonable amount of people that isn't too overwhelming, and it's just enough people to feel like you have that multi-crew group experience without it being too complicated to the point of being, well, you need like an army to run this thing.
Yeah. That's fair.
Oh,
That makes
yeah.
sense.
Well, yeah. But yeah, in terms of PV pay to win, I was like, I think it's just a piece of just like, sure, maybe I think you even mentioned it, and I think in that same starters in life that went over the flight plan, flight model. Sorry, it's like getting words mixed up. Basically, they went over that there's not going to be a thing of every ship is going to be perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a ship that's let's call it OP, but I think what a lot of people are going to miss is that it's going to be OP in that category. Let's say like light fighters. There's going to be a progression where you start with maybe like the Arrow and maybe end up in the Gladius. But it's like it's maybe like the Gladius is the best in class for light fighters, but it's not going to be the best in overall because it's going to be because they can't contend with stuff like in the medium fighter category or the heavy fighter category. There's going to be like a best of in a certain category, but it's not going to be a best ship overall because each ship will have their own drawbacks and flaws. Like some ships can do stuff, other ships can't, of course, but sometimes those ships will also be lacking in certain things or be very highly specific to that one job that they can't really do anything else. Yeah, in terms of paying for power, that I definitely think that should be avoided. Again, one of the things I mentioned earlier was the whole flight base fiasco. I am in agreement with us that that was probably not the best move to do that, especially as a component that could change things. Even though, well, I did actually test it because I think I bought the one not for real money, but I bought it when it came out into the PU, the flight blade for the Scorpius for better maneuverability, and honestly, I barely noticed the difference between the basic flight computer it starts with.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the thing. It's like, yeah, I think eventually it was blown up beyond where it needed to be, but I think the point still stands is that avoiding components or stuff like where you could just buy like the max tier ship. Because I think from how they explained it in, I think it was under insurance in the last CitizenCon, where they explained where they how they whenever should you buy off the pledge store, that starts as tier one, that like the base tier, like basically it's like you bought a car from a dealership. It's like you're buying the standard edition. Was it? Because I think you mentioned something about, I think it's one of your videos about, well, if you're getting overwhelmed in a battle, you just buy like a Polaris off the pledge store. You just eventually buy and buy and buy until you just win.
Yeah.
But I think the problem with that, it's like it's take that to post 1.0. Those are all tier one Polarises that let's say everyone else in that fleet battle you're going to has tier 35 ships. A basic tier Polaris will just be shredded. So it doesn't even matter if you're spending what $900 on a Polaris, if it's going to be melted in about 5 seconds by tier 5 railguns. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. If that's the case, I hope that's the case.
Yeah, that's what I understood because that's how they explained, especially when the crafting bit, they explained like anything you buy off the store is base tier. If you wanted to upgrade it, you have to go through the in-game crafting and upgrade process to upgrade that to tier 5, add all the top tier components and weapons, and you can't necessarily do that with just swiping a credit card.
Yeah.
And even if you did buy it, as like you need to have to spend the time to actually upgrade it so it's in a fighting shape. And again, that again factors into stuff where you need to be on good terms with people who can craft you those ultra high powered components and weapons and ships. You need to have all that organized before you can even send a ship out. Sure, maybe you fight, but again, it comes to the point where I don't see the ships as pay to win. I see it's more like you're getting started out, but you're not getting that far unless you actually invest the time, effort, and either craft it yourself or find people who are in that crafting space to upgrade your ship. And you can't necessarily, and preferably, hopefully, since they have, I believe they did specify it, but again, the hope is that they voice anything that's like, oh, you can just skip to tier 35 with the ship for $60. I don't know. And hopefully and keep that where you buy a ship, but it's the base tier, and you have to go through all the crafting and upgrade loops to get to that tier 35 ship. You can't just skip that. You just skip the grind to buy like another Polaris or whatever.
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable and a good counter to what I described in that video that you're talking about. I tend to think in like scale and exceptions and edge cases. That's just the way I think. And so, yeah, I raise these issues because I'm concerned. Like, I hope there is thought being given, and I'm sure there is, right? But like,
Yeah.
if I think of like an organization that has, they've worked to the point where they have, you know, 5 Idrises in their fleet and maybe a couple other ships, and all those Idrises are tier 5 and they're fully crewed, and which means, so if an Idris is fully crewed, that's what, like 6-8 people. That means they're crewing with like 40 people. My mind immediately jumps to, okay, can I buy 40 Idrises off the store, stick 40 people in them, chock full of AI blades? Can I take out 5 Idrises with 40 Idrises? They're all tier 1, or can those tier 5 Idrises shred 40 tier 1 Idrises? If the answer is yes, they can shred 40 tier 1 Idrises, then yeah, then I'm okay with that. But if 40 tier 1 Idrises pose a threat to those 5 that you put a bunch of work into, then I think it's problematic.
Indeed, it's going to be certainly a balancing act to get it worked out. It's like, again, as far as we know, I think after a certain point, you may not be able to get capital ships anyway. It's like,
yeah.
Cause I think part of the end game loop when they showed the space station, because that final upgrade was being able to build capital ships.
Right.
And if that's like the final tier, I don't see them selling cap ships when part of the whole point of the end game is building those capital ships in the first place.
Yeah.
It kind of again, it's one of the things that it defeats the point of the journey if you can just skip to the ending.
Totally agree. Yeah, if they stop selling them, that's great. that's my hope post 1.0 is that most stuff just stops being sold as far as ships go, and it just becomes cosmetics, maybe blueprints.
I think from what I could be misremembering, but I believe I think their intention, I think when they explained it during the 1.0 presentation when I watched it, is that they were going to end ship sales once 1.0 was live.
Yeah.
I was probably again sticking to cosmetics or that basically basic blue, because I believe the idea is that they want to separate the paints from the ship, or from the weapon or the armor. So instead of necessarily having like, let's say, because I have like the anti-mechs, like the white version you can buy. I believe that you don't get the armor anymore. You get the blueprint to paint anti-mechs armor with that. So eventually the idea is that you can't even buy like armor or weapons off the store. You just buy the cosmetic appearance for that armor when you eventually either craft it or find it.
That would be nice. Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. I think that would be probably the first cosmetic sale I was ever okay with. I tend to not be a fan of even cosmetic sales because it disassociates effort from appearance, but I think
Oh
that
yeah,
would
of
be a
course.
really good move.
Oh yeah, and again, we still have the option where yeah, you can buy maybe a paint for let's say you get like a nice paint for your armor in the store, but there's paints in game that are exclusive to the in game where actually I want that more, but you get I can't say almost like you kind of like filling in a gap where I want to look like this in the meantime, but then that's my end goal. I want to get that thing. Uh, And that's kind of one of the things like I kind of like it. I know it's like Wicklow is a decisive topic, but sometimes you'd be like, okay, I like this armor, but like let's say Wicklow has an armor. I actually have a good example. The recent stealth armor from the recent PTU.
Mm-hmm.
The one it's basically the stealth armor with cloak and hood. I really like the Wicklow version of that, and I feel like what I can't buy that off store, but I would be willing to grind that in armor I do have in the meantime till I can get that armor. I think that's kind of the thing. Yes, you can have cosmetics in the store, but I think having also cool cosmetics that you want to earn is also important, especially because I think they did an example with the tiered armor for like one of the criminal gangs. I forget which presentation. I think it was like when they were talking about reputation,
Mm-hmm.
and they discussed where you can only get that armor if you join that faction, and then basically the more you spend time with that faction, gaining reputation, the better armor you can get to until you get to that tier 5 legendary armor, which you can only get from that gang. I imagine it'd probably be similar to stuff where either different gangs or even like corporations where they have certain cosmetics you can only get from them. And if one of your goals is I want to look like this particular sort of character and it's behind a certain org, you're gonna want to be able to grind that org for it.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, it's going to be a balancing. I know cosmetics is one of those things where people kind of reluctantly kind of say, well, it's not we don't necessarily like it, but it's not the worst thing either. So I think it's more like reluctant acceptance of
Yeah.
cosmetics as it. This isn't. It's not the worst it could be. It's not. It's not the best because these stuff you can't get them in the game, but
Yeah.
it, it's not. It's not a bad midpoint.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of cosmetics they could sell that uh, would not at all be concerning. Like it's really just like armor, weapons, ship skins. Those types of things are the things that bother me a little bit. But on the other hand, like if there's non-combat oriented things that they sold, like I wouldn't have a problem at all. Like apartment decorations, couches, fish tanks, pictures, that kind of stuff. Like go hog wild on that, I say. But
Hmm.
we'll see. Are there any hot button issues we missed?
Hmm. That is a good question. I was like, I think a lot. I think a lot of them I covered when I was going on tangents earlier. To be honest, I was like, I don't obviously. No one knows the monetization of Star Citizen but once it goes past one. But because I think they mentioned stuff that they weren't having subscription. They weren't having. I think the focus, as far as I understood, was basically having Star Citizen as a pay once, pay forever sort of game, where basically you get like a ship package, kind of what
Mm,
we do now. But you once you've bought the game, you kind of basically keep it forever. You're never ever locked out of the game you've bought. Because I think this is something that with Final Fantasy with subscription. Like, I don't necessarily mind subscription as long as that money goes towards making the game better. Like it's like it goes towards maintaining the servers, it goes towards patches that can fix stuff, it goes towards other stuff. But the thing is that I'll use Final Fantasy as example, 14 as example because that has a subscription model. But there's once you've uh, bought a premium account, like you've bought the subscription, you cannot go back to being a free player. You cannot once you run out of subscription, you are completely locked out the game unless you've paid more money to go back in. And it's like, it's not even like a thing where, let's say, like the subscription runs out and with Final Fantasy 14, you can still play up to maybe Stormblood. I think that's the latest free expansion that they are allowing for free trial. But you can't even do that. Like, you can't even make a character that can only go up to Stormblood and still play the game you bought. And as it does remarkably suck, and because especially if you've bought a lot of stuff in the game, you're now locked out of content in that game because, well, either I pay the subscription or I don't get to play at all.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not saying it's like I said, it's not the worst thing, but it's not necessarily consumer helpful either, especially when it's like, well, it's like this is something you've paid for and you want to be able to play it, but then it's like, well, sure, the sub works in the sense of you can help support the developers, they can make the game better, they can add content, they can continue supporting the game far beyond its normal scope. But at the same time, if they don't have an option to play it, even if it's just up to like a free trial, wherever that allows you to go to, and you're locked out of your account forever, it's like, well, then it starts feeling a lot less fun when you can't even use your account anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very fair perspective. It's I've often held the stance that, like, I don't understand how a game like Star Citizen can exist without a subscription. Kind of like
True, but that's what they seem to be considering, because that's what they have said as of the last CitizenCon, I believe. So they, like I said, as far as I take it as face value anyway, is that the intention is a kind of pay once, play forever kind of thing. I think Guild War 2 has a similar thing. Guild War 2 has a thing where it's like you pay once, you just play forever. You never lose access to that game. It's really going to be an interesting way to see how there's whether they do go with pay once, pay forever, whether they have like maybe an optional sub or something along those lines. So again, it's one of those where we have to wait and see until after 1.0 is out the door before we actually see what the monetization becomes after that point.
Yeah, I get it. It's interesting. Like, I'm not a finance person. Like, I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about numbers. But like a pay once, access forever to me feels like what if Netflix gave me the option to just pay $80 and then I could watch as much Netflix as I wanted forever. That's what it feels like to me. But
I mean that'd be awesome if that happened, but it seems unlikely.
yeah.
But yeah. But the thing is, like, it's more. We have to see what choices are made when things come about.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be something to keep an eye out on as things develop. Because there is still other options. I know there's theories going around about what other monetization stuff they could do. Where they could do, well, we have Squadron 2 coming up that can help supplement stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think, I know maybe it's not on the. It's kind of off topic again, but it's like.
Go for it.
But yeah, I think the thing is that I'm of the opinion that Squadron 42 is a kind of make or break thing for CIG, in the terms of, even though we've been playing Star Citizen for a long time, because it's been out, what, 13, 15 years? I forget the exact number, but the critical part is that they do not have a released game. That this is a gaming company that does not have a fully released game. And I think this, like, a lot of people are going to be judging people not involved in Star Citizen are going to focus on Squadron 42 when that comes out as, what is this company actually capable of? What is a finished product from this company actually going to be like?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be. I'm very sure, I know for a fact that probably Squadron 42 will be torn apart by everyone, but basically trying to find the littlest fault in it. Because Because of the reputation CIG has built up, either unintentionally or not. But the thing is that everyone's eyes are going to be on the thing as like, if this game is a success, is a banger, it's like a 10 out of 10. As like, then it's an undeniable thing where CG can prove they can release a finished product that can just knock things out the park.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. It's gonna be a huge moment in their arc, wherever that arc takes them.
Indeed.
But yeah, some good extra topics there. You also highlighted the flight model. That's definitely one I had missed. So good one.
Indeed.
I think we can wrap it up there.
All right. So I was like, thank you for having me on. It's been a
CyberFauna.
delightful talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun chatting.
Indeed.
Are there any shameless plugs you want to make? Working on a channel or anything like that?
I am working on a channel under this name currently. It's not available to be viewed yet, but essentially what my content will be focused on, I'll be focused on mainly sort of like let's plays. I'll be focused on role playing, storytelling. Of course, I'll be eventually covering Star Citizen on my own channel as well, basically going over either adventures I have in the game, talking about my thoughts on certain topics. Essentially, since again one of my other backgrounds is as a writer, I especially I'll be doing a lot of stuff in character, especially like I said, because I like to feel myself in wherever I'm playing. So a lot of the time I will be hopefully sort of playing the character of Widow. Was it a agent of Arasaka? Was it that finds herself in a lot of very exotic and unusual situations, aka playing a lot of different video games and sort of seeing how she reacts to different things.
Cool. Spectacular. Well, thanks again. You brought a great perspective to this ongoing conversation, and who knows, if we're lucky, some Sybil back and forth like this might even toss some water on a fire somewhere.
Indeed.
Thanks to everyone who tuned in to check out this chat. It was great having you, and we would love to continue the conversation with you all in the comments below. Until then, we're out.
Ta-ta!